For thousands of years, the sands of Egypt has whispered secrets that stretch far beyond the limits of history books. From the colossal pyramids that have stood unmoved by time, to writings carved into stone with precision modern tools still struggle to replicate, ancient Egypt has remained one of humanity's most enduring enigmas. But behind the golden mass of Tutankhamun, the towering Sphinx lies something far more unsettling. Questions that science cannot answer, mysteries that defy logic, stories that don't fit into the accepted timeline, and monument that seems to laugh in the face of our understanding of ancient engineering and astronomy. Despite centuries of research, excavations, and theories, there are still anomalies hidden beneath the surface, both literally and figuratively, that continue to confound historians, archaeologists, and scientists alike. These are not just myths or campfire stories passed down through generations. These are documented facts, unexplained phenomena, physical impossibilities, and traces of knowledge so advanced it raises one chilling question. What did the ancient Egyptians know that we still don't? In this video, we delve deep into the mysteries of ancient Egypt, mysteries that science cannot explain, and in doing so, we challenge everything you thought you knew about one of the greatest civilizations in history. The Great Pyramid's impossible precision. The Great Pyramid of Giza. Even after thousands of years, it still dominates the desert horizon. Stoic, silent, and standing as though time itself dares not disturb it. Constructed during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu around 2560 BCE, this pyramid continues to defy every scientific model of construction and understanding. But the deeper you look, the more the questions multiply. Let's begin with its most basic feature, the sheer scale of it. The pyramid stands at an original height of 400 to 60 meters, with a base of covering over 13 acres. That's large enough to fit 10 football fields. And yet, even with its mind-boggling size, the pyramid's layout is astonishingly precise. The base is nearly a perfect square, each side measuring roughly 230.4 meters with a margin of error of less than 1 centimeter. This isn't just impressive for the ancient world, it's nearly unattainable in today's modern construction under similar natural conditions. And then there's the alignment. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an error of 3 to the 60th of a degree. That makes it the most accurately aligned structure on Earth, even for today. For context, true north is not the same as magnetic north. It requires knowledge of the Earth's actual rotation and precise astronomical observation. Somehow, thousands of years ago, the ancient Egyptians aligned a 6 million ton monument to the true coordinate directions without computers, without satellites, without GPS. Many theories attempt to explain this. Some suggest they observed the star Tupan in the Draco constellation, which was the pole star at the time. But even using the stars, the level of precision is astonishing, especially considering they would have needed years, even decades, of constant systematic skywatching, accurate timekeeping, and a comprehensive understanding of celestial mechanics. We're supposed to believe this knowledge existed naturally, before the wheel even reached Egypt. Now let's talk about materials. The pyramid was built with 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks, some of which weigh up to 80 tons. These weren't just stacked haphazardly. They were placed with such skill that even today, you can't fit a razor blade between many of them. The joints between the stone are tighter than anything produced by modern mass machinery. Some stones interlac with complex internal shapes, almost like ancient 3D puzzles, creating a kind of seismic resistance no one talks about. The structure has withstood thousands of years of earthquakes, floods, and human activity. Yet, we're told it was built using copper chisels and manual labor without the wheel or pulley system. Ask any modern engineer or stonemason. Cutting and moving that volume of stone today would require cranes, diamond-tipped saws, lasers, and years of logistics planning. And still, it would be a challenge. The logistics alone, cutting, transporting, positioning millions of blocks precisely angled to 51 degrees to achieve the optimal pyramid slope, make the conventional explanation feel less like history and more like mythology. And speaking of angles, there's an undeniable connection between the pyramid and mathematical constants. The pyramid's dimension encode the value of pi and phi to several decimal places. The slope of the sides form a near-perfect representation of the golden ratio, which governs organic growth and design throughout nature, from seashells and sunflowers to galaxies and hurricanes. Even more chilling, if you take the height of the pyramid and you multiply it by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the Earth. If you multiply the base perimeter by the same number, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth. Both measurements are accurate to within a fraction of a percent, exactly matching satellite data that wasn't discovered until the 20th century. And that number, 43,200, isn't random. It appears in ancient Sumerian texts, Vedic traditions, and precision cycles. It represents a great year, the complete cycle of the Earth's actual precession over 25,920 years, a number unknown to modern astronomers until a few centuries ago. How did they know? The deeper you dig, the more the Great Pyramid begins looks like less a tomb and more like a repository of knowledge, a stone-encoded library of scientific truths buried beneath layers of sand, time, and official narratives. But perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all of this: what if the Egyptians didn't build it? This isn't a fringe theory anymore. A growing number of scholars suggest that the pyramid may have predated the Old Kingdom, and that the Egyptians inherited it, possibly repairing or repurposing a much older structure. This aligns with early accounts by Herodotus and even some Egyptian priests who claimed their civilization was the custodian of ancient knowledge, not its originator. And then there's the enigma of the missing mummy. Despite its colossal scale, intricate passageway, and central king's chamber, the Great Pyramid contained no burial remains, no golden coffins, no treasures, no hieroglyphics on the inner wall, just a plain granite coffer, empty. It's unlike any other pyramid in Egypt, which are typically filled with inscription, curses, and funerary items. Why build the most elaborate structure in human history and leave it empty? Some believe it was never meant to be a tomb. Instead, it may be function as a resonance chamber, a power generator, or even an ascension device, term that push the limits of conventional archaeology but refuse to go away. Others suggest it served a more abstract purpose, to preserve knowledge for a future civilization, one that might one day be ready to understand what it all meant. But if that's true, then who was the pyramid built for? And who left it behind? To this day, the Great Pyramid of Giza refuses to give up its secret. It stands as a timeless anomaly, one that may never be fully explained. Not by science, not by history, not by logic, only by something far older and far stranger. The Osirian at Abydos. In the sacred city of Abydos, nestled beside the temple of Seta-I, lies a structure that continues to defy the accepted chronology of ancient Egypt. A structure that seems to exist out of place and out of time. It's called the Osirian. On the surface, the Osirian doesn't look like much. To most tourists, it's just a partially submerged ruin at the back of a larger temple complex. But to those who study ancient architecture, geology, and Egyptology, it's a smoking gun. A forbidden artifact that seems to whisper a chilling truth. There may have been a civilization before Egypt. Let's start with the most obvious anomaly. the architecture. The Temple of Seta-I, built in the 13th century BCE during the 19th dynasty, sits above ground, constructed in the classic Egyptian style. But the Osirian? It's buried deep below, carved into the earth, and built using the megalithic blocks weighing 50 to 100 tons each. These stones are fitted together without mortar and display a building style completely different from the rest of the temple. Whereas the Temple of Seti-I is filled with intricate hieroglyphics and decorative carvings, the Osirian is stark, minimalistic, and made from pink granite, the same material used in the core chambers of the Great Pyramid. The construction resembles not the work of dynastic Egyptians, but rather megalithic sites of Baalbek, Sakyarhuman, and Köpekli Tepe, sites scattered across the globe, and possibly tied together by something far older than recorded history. And here's the puzzle. The Osirian is lower than the surrounding structures and submerged beneath the water table. This has led many researchers to conclude that it must be older than the Temple of Seti-I, far older. Seti-I didn't build it, he discovered it, then built his temple beside it. In fact, he left no record of constructing the Osirian at all. No inscriptions, no dedication, nothing. Why? Perhaps because he didn't know who built it either. Mainstream Egyptologists argue that Osirian was built by Seta-I as a symbolic tomb for the god Osiris. But this explanation raises more questions than it answers. Why use massive, uncarved blocks weighing over 50 tons when all other New Kingdom temples use much smaller, more manageable stones? Why build it underground, below the waterline, making it almost impossible to use for ritual purposes? And why does it look so primitive, so different from the ornate temples of the New Kingdom? There is a growing belief that the Osirian is a megalithic structure from a forgotten era, possibly built thousands of years before the dynastic Egyptians ever laid the foundations of their civilization. Some suggest it may date back to the pre-dynastic period, before 3000 BCE. Others believe it's even older, perhaps from a lost civilization that predates known history altogether. And then, there's the most unsettling part: the flooding. The Osirian is constantly submerged in groundwater, even during the dry season. Some speculate that the structure was deliberately built above the water table, but changes in the Earth's climate and geology over the past 10,000 years raised the water level. If that's true, then the Osirian had to be built during a period when the water table was significantly lower, possibly before the end of the last age, of over 12,000 years ago. This timeline put it squarely alongside Köpekli Tepe, the oldest stone temple complex in the world, and Plastos is the date for the fall of Atlantis. Coincidence? Or are these ancient sites across the globe actually survivors of a forgotten chapter of human civilization? A chapter that was wiped out by a cataclysm so devastating, its memory was erased, leaving behind only stone. Some alternative researchers believe that the Osirian is one of these remnants, a monument of a pre-flood civilization that possessed knowledge far beyond what we associate with the primitive humans of that era. A society capable of quarrying and transporting multi-ton megaliths, perfectly aligning their structure to astronomical points and building to last not centuries, but millennia. Mainstream academia rejects this theory, often dismissing it as pseudo-archaeology, but they offer not solid explanation for the engineering of the Osirian, nor for its eerie resemblance to megalithic sites separated by oceans and continents. So the question remains: who built the Osirian? And what if we're not looking at a ruin left behind by the ancient Egyptians, but instead at a message from the olden world, one whose existence we've forgotten, buried beneath centuries of sands and silence? As with the Great Pyramid, the Osirian sits at the crossroad between science and myth. between accepted history and the possibility of something far greater. It forces us to understand the uncomfortable notion that human civilization may not be a straight line of progress, but a cycle, rising and falling again and again and again through the ages. And the Osirian, it may just be one of the last standing relics of the last great fall. The Dendera Light. Deep beneath the temple of Hathor in Dendera, Egypt, lies a chamber that very few tourists ever see. It's tucked away in a crypt, silent, narrow, and strangely dark. But on the walls of this chamber is a carving so bizarre, so out of place, that it has divided historians and scientists for decades. It's known as the Dendera Light. At first glance, the carving looks innocent enough, just another scene etched into a wall of a sacred temple. But a closer inspection reveals something deeply unsettling. The image depicts what appears to be a giant bulb, with a serpent-like filament curling inside of it. The bulb is attached to a box-like base from which a wire-like cord extends, and standing nearby is a figure holding two knives, possibly as a symbol of protection or caution. It looks uncannily like a giant electrical lamp. And that's exactly what has ignited this centuries-long debate. Traditional Egyptologists claim the scene is symbolic, a spiritual image showing the lotus flower birthing a serpent representing life energy or creation myths. But proponents of ancient technology believe it is something far more literal. A visual record of electrical lightning technology used in Egypt over 2,000 years ago. It sounds crazy until you realize what's missing. Despite the grandeur and complexity of ancient Egyptian tombs and temples, there is no evidence of soot or smoke damage on the ceiling. These chambers stretch deep underground, far from natural sunlight. If they used torches to light their way, where are the burn marks? Where is the residue? Even in the Great Pyramid, which has no windows, no ventilation staff, and stretches far into the earth, there's no trace of flame-based illumination, no soot, no lamp holders, just cold, dark corridors, and perfectly preserved artwork. So how did they see what they were doing? Some researchers suggest the use of mirrors to pass sunlight into the depths. But this solution quickly fails. Mirrors lose light exponentially. After a few turns, the light will be too dim to be useful. Others argue for oil lamps, but again, where's the soot? And that's where the Dendera light theory gains traction. In 1894, the famed Austrian engineer Joseph F. Plumridge, who worked with NASA, proposed that the device shown in the Dendera crypt was a crocus tube, an early form of vacuum tube capable of producing light when electricity passes through it. The serpent in the carving may represent the plasma arc, and the box it connects to could be a form of power source or battery. Some even draw comparisons between the shape of the Dendera light and the structure of a modern cathode ray tube. This isn't only a piece of evidence fueling the theory. The so-called Baghdad battery, discovered in Iraq and dating back to 250 BCE, consists of a clay jar with a copper cylinder and an iron rod inside. When filled with vinegar or another acidic substance, it can produce a small electrical charge. Was this an early example of battery technology? And if so, who invented it? What if ancient civilization shared a forgotten, now lost form of electrical knowledge? One not driven by fossil fuels or power grids, but by simple chemical reactions and natural resonance. Critics of the Dendera light theory point out that there's no physical evidence of light bulbs or wiring in ancient ruins. And that's true, but then again, how much of ancient Egypt remains unexcavated? According to many archaeologists, more than 70% of ancient Egyptian structures and passageways still lie beneath the sand and earth, untouched, undiscovered, or deliberately hidden. If the Egyptians once possessed something like this technology and it was considered sacred, wouldn't it make sense for them to hide it or destroy it when the civilization fell? Consider this. Throughout history, knowledge has been lost repeatedly. The burning of the Library of Alexandria wiped out incalculable records of science, history, and invention. Could the same have happened with the artifact tools that Tendera carving describes? Or could it be something else entirely? Something not technological, but energetic. Some researchers believe that the ancient temples and pyramids were not just monuments or tombs, but energy conductors, channeling telluric currents or earth energy through sacred geometry and resonance. If that's true, then what we're looking at may not be a light bulb in the modern sense, but a symbol of vibrational power known and used long before our discovery of electricity. We may never know the true purpose of the Tendera light, but its very existence poses a haunting question. If ancient Egyptians had knowledge of electricity, where did it come from? Was it an accidental discovery? A legacy of a forgotten golden age? Or was it something given? Something taught from outside? Whatever myth or misunderstood science, the Tendera light remains one of the most controversial pieces of evidence in Egypt's long legacy of impossible knowledge. And like the Great Pyramid and the Osirian, it continues to whisper of a civilization that may have known far more than we ever imagined.